Loading data from a file and then plotting it out on a screen is pretty easy in MATLAB. It might be one of its biggest fortes. If I ever want to visualize some kind of data, I almost always use MATLAB or Octave. Okay, so how do we do that? I'm going to show us how to do that. First, I got a data file for us to use. I put it in the data folder. So the data folder now has all those O ones with just a single column of a varying number of points. And now I have one of those calibration files. It's just 10 XY pairs. So it's 2 columns, 10 rows. And so it's just a calibration data that you can do a linear regression on. We're going to do that in the upcoming lessons. Good. All right, so get that D2015001.txt file and copy it. And then I'm going to go into my Octave folder and I'm going to make a new folder called Load Data. I'm going to start using folders for each individual project lesson online that we're going to do, just like I have with other programming languages. It's good to organize your Octave folder that way. Good. Okay, so I make the load data folder inside Octave. I go into it, and then I put the data file there, the D2015001.txt file. Then I open up Octave, and I want to get my Octave into the folder, into the directory that I'm into. So you go up to the folder, and you can see it's either going to be in main or Octave. You can get into Octave, and then I do browse. So then you can, on the far right there is browse thing. You can browse to get load data. Click on the load data directory, and then choose at the bottom there. If you're using MATLAB instead, MATLAB's way easier to do file navigation. You just go in there, and it's all pretty automated. It's easy. There's no instruction needed. You just get to the right directory. Good. Okay, so now we're in the right directory. We got Octave up, and we're in the right directory. We have the data file there. First, I'm going to do it manually, just line by line, and then I'm going to write a script to load the data. The command to load a file is load, right? So you say load, and then in quotes, single or double quotes, you can say the name of the file, D201201500t.txt, semicolon. All of a sudden, you see on the left there that now there's one variable. It's 2 by 10, right? And it's the name of the file minus the extension. So it's D2015001 is the name of the variable now, where all the data is stored. If you don't have a letter at the beginning, if it's a number at the beginning of that file, it will add a letter, X, I think it is. And so the rules for variables in MATLAB are the same as they are in C. So naming rules for variables is the same. Variables should always start with a letter, not a number. They shouldn't have oddball characters in them other than the underscore, all that stuff. Those rules apply. MATLAB is case sensitive, just as many other programming languages are case sensitive. And so all those rules that you would use for a traditional programming language, you should use for MATLAB as well. So that's why this data file has D as the beginning character, so that it turns into a variable without any kind of change. Good? All right. Then I want to separate them out into columns. I want the first column to be the X values and the second column to be the Y values. The way to do that is to say X equals D2015001, open parentheses, then then a comma is inside the parentheses, and the first part of the parentheses is how many rows you want, and the second part is which columns you want. So you could pick one variable, right? You could have 1, 1, and that would be the first row, first column, right? If you put a colon in the first section there before the comma, that means all rows. I want all rows, comma, 1, the first column, right? So that's what that means. And then Y is D2015001, open parentheses, colon, comma, 2. So it's the second column. And you can see there on the in the data section that X and Y are now 10 by 1s, 10 by 1 vectors. Good? And you can plot them. Plot X, comma, Y. That doesn't look very good. It looks weird, right? Because it's calibration data, I want the circles, I want symbols, not lines connecting them, right? It's connecting this jiggy-jaggy line. That's not really what I want. I want to see just the symbols. So in order to do that, I have to figure out how to plot with symbols instead of lines. And one way to do that is with the help command. If you're in MATLAB and you go help space plot, it'll come up on your command window all the different ways to look. If you look in there, it'll tell you all the colors: red, cyan, yellow, all the different letters that indicate colors. K is black, B is blue, right? And so all the different, you can make it any different color you want. You can have asterisks, circles, all sorts of other symbols there to indicate where the point is. So, and then different types of lines, dotted lines, dashed lines, things like that. So you can really manipulate when you call the plot command what it's going to look like. I want it to be circles. I think circles are a good symbol for that. So I'm just going to put O in quotes, and I'm going to say plot X, comma Y, comma O for circles, and then you can see the circles come up. If you're using Octave, the Octave online help at the command window isn't very good. It's weird. So the other way to do this, by the way, is just Google it. So if you just Google plot space Octave, boom, up comes the help for it, and you just read the whole help file. That's really the way I do it nowadays. I use Google, not there's a help feature on both MATLAB and Octave that you can use. Just use Google. It's just as fast. And in the case of Octave, it's way more easy. It's way easier. All the help features in Octave aren't as good as MATLAB's. Okay. So I was able to import data and plot it out. That's pretty cool, right? Let's make a script file for this operation, right? So then I go back into the command window and I type out edit loaddata.m. There is no file there. It says, do you want to create it? Yes, I want to create it. So it comes up. Up comes the editor, blank. And now I'm going to do the normal things I do in a script. I'm going to do the housekeeping commands first. Clear space all, close space all, right? Then I'm going to load the data. I'm just going to take the commands I did and put them into here, into the script. So I can copy them from the command window in here and take away the little arrows, or just retype them out. And so it's just the same commands that I did in the command window. Okay, so I got all that worked. So now I just save it, Control S. I go back into the command window. In Octave, it's the tab at the bottom there that's going to switch you between them. In MATLAB, the editor should be on the top and the command window should be on the bottom. It's a horse apiece. Either way you want to do it, it's just a different, interface, a very slightly different interface. So then I go back into the command prompt. I type out load data, node.m. Press enter, and it comes up just like before. There's one more thing I wanted to teach here, which is commenting. You should comment your scripts. The way to comment the script is with the % symbol. So I go back into the editor and I put all these different comments in there to say which section, what everything's doing, that kind of stuff. So that's what you should do that on scripts, just like you do on regular programming, is to give yourself hints as to what was going on in your script. I always comment all of my scripts usually to remind myself what I did. And then when I go back into the command window, after I save it and I go back into the command window, I run it again and it works the same. So comments don't do anything to the function of any script. Good, that's it. So now we learned how to load data into a file. Next, we're going to actually do some calculations on that data.